Okay, so we've got Marcel Donnelly with us, who's the CEO of FlatRateNOW, which is an all-in-one fixed pricing and quoting solution for trade businesses that contains over 1,500 plumbing, gas, electrical, solar, and roofing related tasks that are linked to over 15,000 different products made by Australian suppliers that are continually being updated with current pricing, new materials, and new tasks. So you can whip up an accurate and profitable quote for your customers in no time. Now, Marcel's here today to share some of his thoughts and unique insights around pricing and the industry as large. So I guess first question for you, Marcel, how do you even get into the business of software for tradies? Because I understand that your background isn't even in the trade. So give everyone a bit of context around what your unique background is.
So my background is actually in insurance. So I used to be a broker, and I worked for one of the larger firms in Australia, managing the national portfolio. So I had over $15 billion worth of premiums under my belt nationally, as well as in New Zealand. And how I got into the trade space was through managing a lot of those policies as a broker. You have to handle claims. Now, through claims, when you're dealing with strata, buildings, and real estate, you've got a lot of trades that you have to handle, a lot of trade quotes, a lot of trade invoices. Now, insurance companies are not the most sophisticated when it comes to technology, and I also learned the hard way that tradies aren't either. Now, there needed to be better ways of communication, so my core focus towards my end of my tenure as a brokerage firm was improving technology. So I looked at how I can get not only just claim information, but also quote information from tradesmen and whoever else into our system to improve the claims process as one part of the processes that we have to do in the brokerage firm. The stepping stone for me from insurance companies to me being a part of FlatRateNOW was quite an interesting one. And it kind of just fell into my lap, but it kind of did feel like that. It was just the next progression of my development in my career. And the main reason why I was so excited by taking the next step into looking at FlatRateNOW was so many times we had claims come through from tradesmen for large amounts. I'm not talking $1,000 or $2,000. I'm talking $50,000, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 quotes and invoices. And we had one that still sticks by me to this day, where it was 4 words on this invoice. It was burst pipe, hot water. It was $75,000. 3 months old, this claim. And when I rung him, I said, "Well, mate, I'm sorry, but I'm your broker. I'm trying to help get this claim paid, and you've got $75,000 on this invoice in this 4 words." He went, "Oh yeah, mate, sorry, that was 2 months ago. I don't have any more information about that. I just don't have it stored." It was a handwritten quote, and he couldn't even remember doing it because it was during a busy period. I said, "Well, how are you expecting me to get the insurers to pay $75,000 for 4 words?" He went, "Well, I did the work, so I don't doubt that. But how am I going to explain this to the insurance company?" And he went, "Well, sorry, that's just what I've done." I said, "Okay. Well, sorry, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this paid." And it wasn't a very nice conversation after that, because at the end of the day, it was very tough to get that paid.
And at the end of the line, you've got a customer, a homeowner, who needed to get this approved and paid as well, because they need to get on with their life. And 4 words is not enough to cut it. So wow.
It's just that's just stuck with me. And that was 2015. So that's 6 years ago. And that still sticks in the back of my mind, is thinking there had to be better ways of doing this. The stress on that tradesman to get $75,000 worth of invoice paid, that's sitting on his books for months. And, the insurance company's not going to, they want to pay, they try their hardest to pay in peak times, but they also have guidelines that they have to stick by. They can't just willy-nilly pay things out. So that was definitely the deciding factor for me when the opportunity came up with FlatRateNOW, where I looked at it and went, this really speeds up the quoting process. This also makes it easy to tell what was installed when and where. And the tradesmen don't have to focus on the nitty-gritty details. They can focus on the sale. They can focus on their customer. So for me, it was like a 2-pronged attack. They get to build what I needed to build on a quote, which would have saved me so much time if I was doing it as an insurer. And it also improves how the tradesmen are perceived while they're on site with their customers. So I thought, got to give this a go. A lot of the time as well, these quotes and invoices they're not built or flagged as being a claim. So if we were just to look at the insurance component, a lot of the homeowners will call a tradesman up and say, I need this work done. So do the work, and then the customer will say, well, actually, I might be able to claim this against my insurance policy. So then you've gone from a position of a tradesman where they've gone, well, I've just built this quote for a homeowner, so now I've got to explain myself to $1 billion enterprise about why I need this, why this work had to be done. There shouldn't be any difference. There shouldn't be any difference in how that information is displayed and shared. It should be the same regardless. But what we do find is that if you're not consistent with one customer segment, then how are you going to be consistent with the other? And why would there be any difference or any inconsistencies in that information? Because the job is still the job at the end of the day. And what you should be looking to try and achieve as a tradesman is providing enough information, enough of the story to your customer so that they understand what's going on. Because the more that they understand, the greater that they're going to perceive your quote. The greater that they perceive your quote, the more chance they're going to go ahead with you. Because I can tell you, if you're sitting there to explain the situation to your client, explain the story, get them on board with what you're doing, they're not going to want to go to another tradesman. They're not going to want to hear the same story twice because they might think they will. And two, they're beginning to believe in you, that you understand what you're trying to do. And then when that all comes together at that point with a customer, if there are any downstream payments that need to be done, such as an insurance company, they can then liaise with their broker, liaise with their insurance company themselves and say, well, yes, actually, I got all this information from the tradesman. He did this, and this for me. And I can confirm that because this is how detailed the quote was.
So you've got this background in insurance, you've seen it firsthand, you've experienced it and gone, man, what's going on here? How was that transition into FlatRateNOW? And, how have you seen the power of FlatRateNOW help to solve this issue?
Well, within the system that we've built is not just tens of years of information that's been put together into an easy to use app, but it's actually the fact that when you're jumping into the system and you are building your quote up, because you've got all those pre-built tasks that have all the pre-written headings, all the pre-written descriptions, the materials that are linked to it and the pricing, it actually removes that uncertain anxiety that the tradesmen can get while they're on site. As you both touched on then, yes, they can talk, and they can talk because they believe in themselves and they believe in their knowledge of the trade. They're a plumber, they're a sparky, whatever that might be. When you're talking about someone that you love and you're passionate about, it just flows. But when you have to sit down and write something out, you're verifying at the same time as writing. And if you're not confident in your literary skills and writing things down, then you start to doubt what you believe in. So then when you try to convey everything that you've said to a customer into a quote, there's a disconnect. And it happens. I'm not the best at writing either. And I see it every day when I go to write an email. I look back and I go, oh, wow, why did I write that for? That doesn't make any sense. Even though it's perfectly fine, it's just me second guessing. So within the system, we look at, solving that problem by replacing 80% of the heavy lifting. If we can give nice detailed descriptions that are not IKEA how-to guides, so they can't just jump in there and go, well, the customer reads the quote and go, I can now install my own hot water system. Not at all, but explains to the customer that there is a lot of steps that are necessary to go through as a tradesman to get the installation done. Then if we can do that for 80% of the job and allow the tradesman to focus on that 20%, we've solved that problem in our eyes, because it's a lot easier to focus 100% of your energy on 20% than trying to get over that 80% of the heavy lifting to then turn around and start to focus on that small 20%. So that's how we've attempted to solve the problem.
Oh, that's excellent. Even regulatory change, like a hot water system might have been installed years ago. It's not plug and play. Suddenly you have to bring it up to the new code. So it's not just, a hot water system. There's all the valves and, different connection bits that they need that happen, so that if that's all written into the FlatRateNOW process, just makes it easy.
So much easier.
So much easier.
Well, we do have, that's what I'm trying to think now. We had the feedback from a few of our businesses actually that said, can you get the Australian standards actually put in to the system? And we said, what do you mean? They said, well, the Australian standard, dot this, blank, and just take it out of there and put it into your platform as a pre-build that's $0. And I was thinking, why would you want that? And then I realized there is nothing more powerful than talking to your customer and saying, your hot water system that's over here was installed 12 years ago. It's a fantastic install. Don't get me wrong, it's still working. However, we now have to have these valves installed. And if you don't want us to install these valves, I'm not touching your hot water system because this is the Australian standard. And if I'm the last tradesman to touch the line, then I'm the last tradesman that they're going to be chasing if something goes wrong. So in accordance to the standard, here's what we have to do. If you want to go ahead with the work, then this is what we, then we can do this right now. And this will now bring your property up to code. And I thought that was really smart. That was a great way of looking at the system, because businesses, and now we've had them there now for about 12 months, and so many companies are just adding them to quotes, even if they're not even touching the hot water system. If they're just touching the copper line around it, boom, Australian standards, they put that on there straight away. For the switchboard, for the Sparkies, they do the same thing as well. If they're installing a new appliance, we should be technically in accordance with the Australian standards, inspecting a switchboard to make sure that you've got the adequate RCBOs or whatever else that needs to be installed. And if the client says no, they've at least gone, hey, we've informed you, you said no, and we don't have the right to force you to do something, but just be mindful of that. So it definitely does help.
There's a lot of power in that, because it's an interesting point in terms of, you think of the industry norm, in terms of quoting. There's the standard, and the bar isn't set that high. But when you're saying things like Australian standards, the level of professionalism is, you're not perceived as just your regular plumber, your regular electrician anymore. You're up here. And in terms of going back to the point you made before, which is really interesting, between the discrepancy between, they're great talking to the customer person to person, but there's that lack of congruency to the quote. And this really comes back to, because that's what we call it congruency. So in marketing as well, marketing to sales, you want congruency through the message that you're saying in your marketing into your sales. But I've never heard the point of congruency between your face-to-face relations to the quote. And if you don't have that congruency there, and you aren't showcasing that professionalism, you might be speaking all well and good to the customer face to face, but as soon as you get into that quote and, they haven't really talked about much here, there's no consistency here. But if you come at it with Australian standards, you're breaking down the job, not in an itemized way, but you're breaking down the story of it. And almost like you say, it's not an IKEA how-to, it's a very thorough understanding to increase the perceived value of the job you're doing. Man, you're setting yourself apart and differentiating yourself so much from everyone else in the industry. That's right.
And it also allows you to charge the right amount for the quote, because you're not just throwing it, at that point there, the customer doesn't believe you're just throwing together a price. They believe in that you're actually going through and saying, well, I have to do this. And I've seen this actually happen with businesses in our software, where they've won jobs and the customer has said, you were the most expensive. But the reason why we went with you was because you sat there and explained to me that the Australian standards indicated that you had to do this. And I used what you said to me to other tradesmen, and I caught them off guard. And they were like, oh, well, why do you even understand the Australian standards? No, we don't talk about this stuff. And the customer went, well, if you don't want to tell me what I need to know so that my own property is compliant, then why would I go ahead with you guys?
Yeah.
So it is really important that message is passed along, whether it's from word of mouth, face to face into the quote, and then not only just on the quote at that moment, it's also for anyone else that they attempt to talk to. So if that customer then goes and talks to their partner, they talk to another tradesman, they talk to an insurance company, they've got that confidence that they know what they need to know to move on and provide that information as well.
I think too, there's always going to be people in society that are going to hire the guy from the local pub, and do a cash job. That's not the type of clientele that brings in the most profitable work. The profitable work are people that care about maintaining their property to Australian standards so that their insurance covers them.
I totally agree. So it increases the perceived value, and that's what we're all here for today. We're all about trying to raise the bar for tradesmen, for the trade industry, because it needs to get to a point really where the bloke down the road that's just going to do it for a quick, case of beer or $50 for the labour rate that shouldn't be what the customers are looking for, because that's not going to help protect them in the future if something goes wrong. That fellow, you know, all well and good that he's done it for you for cheap. What happens if something goes pear-shaped? An insurance company gets involved, legal aspect gets involved, things like that further down the line, they're only going to make it worse. So it's
interesting you say that, because the positioning of the tradesman that probably has almost been forgotten is it's their duty and their obligation to actually educate the customer that. Because if you're not communicating that in, whether it's face-to-face or in the quote, how are they meant to know?
exactly right.
Because they're, you know, all they see is red wire, black wire. Oh, I don't go near that. That's their whole perception of, you know, I guess that's an electrical example, but if you're not communicating and educating the client, I guess in these areas that they're not aware of, so for example, the Australian standards, that's a fantastic way, I guess, coming back to differentiating yourself, because you're being perceived as, man, this guy isn't just your regular plumber. He is the expert. And now you're moving away from just being a plumber to their trusted advisor, the fiduciary that, you know, they're going to come to you whenever, you know, they get another quote or their friend gets a quote and they're like, oh, I got this weird quote. Oh yeah, I got, you know, John's Plumbing. He's the guy that I use. Man, he knows, he's across everything. He's a real expert in this field. And once you're in that kind of position of leverage, you are setting yourself so far apart from everyone else.
It is a very good point, actually. This makes me think about lawyers. If you really want, if you have something to do with law, if you have something to do with your accounts, or an accountant, sorry, you're always looking for the person who knows the most in that industry. Yeah. You know, if you want to go, oh, I got something wrong with my tax, I want to go to a tax accountant. I don't want to go to this Joe bloke down the road. I'll spend the money to make sure that I get the best guy onto the job, because I want to make sure that I get the best outcome. And that's what I don't quite understand, is why tradesmen are happy to be seen as, oh, I'm just going to go for the cheap guy.
Yeah.
Why? Who likes to be called the cheap guy? It's in my mind, it just baffles me. You know, as you touched on, Troy, I would want to be known as the one that is knowledgeable. Every time I come out there, you're going to get the best job. You know, nothing's going to go wrong with the job. And if it does go wrong, I'll be back there. I'll make sure it's all looked after for you. If anything happens further down the line, you have to get an insurance company involved, or, you know, anybody else involved, I'll be there to support you. You know, that's the type of, you know, at the end of the day, this is a professional trade. You should be professional in what you're providing as your service. And that's, you know, they might, you know, traders might think that customers don't want that, but they want that more than ever. And there's so much going on in the world.
Known as the budget guy or the discount guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There's so many different angles you can sell on that too. With you were touching on is even your records keeping. If you've got the right job management software and customer records that you can pull them up in a flash, is you might be doing that behind the scenes better than everyone else. If you're not communicating that as part of your sales process, you're really missing an opportunity. You know, so there's all of that aspect into it as well.
So I got another question for you, Marcel. What have you found to be the biggest challenge that trade business owners face when it comes to pricing?
Understanding their labour rate.
Yeah,
that's a biggie.
Has to be. Every tradesman knows the average time it takes to do a job. So no matter how I ask a tradesman, I can ask him in 1,001 different ways about installing a hot water system. They will always be able to come back to me and tell me the average time it takes. But the biggest difficulty, the biggest challenge that we face when setting up a company on our software is
overhead rates and all that.
Yeah, it's them putting a glass ceiling on themselves and going, well, old mate down the road, he's charging $150 an hour. Good on him. What's your overheads? What should you be charging? Oh no, but if he's doing $150, you know, shouldn't I be doing that? It's like, well, no. Why would you want to set yourself up for failure? Because once you get to that point of hitting $150 an hour, you're going to feel so, you know, what's what I'm looking for? Not sick in your guts, but you're going to feel so awful about going higher, because you're thinking, I can't. I shouldn't be moving too far away from that point of 150. But the race up to 150 is going to feel amazing, because if they're a one-man band or a two-man band, and they should be charging $80 to $90 an hour, because that's what their overheads, you know, are, then that 150 makes them feel fantastic. You know, they're getting good profit margins. Above 50%. 3 months later, they hire another guy. Boom, that drops down to, you know, 50% profit. Another 3 months to get another guy. And then all of a sudden, after multiple months, they're now hitting the point at which their expenses are now capping the 150. And if they try to grow any further, it's like a very hard rubber band, constantly pulling them back to that 150 mark. And until they understand that that is a glass ceiling that they've put on themselves, which can be easily broken through by talking to the likes of the both of you about, hey guys, how do I get above my 150? I'm stuck with where I am now. Then it's a challenge that I unfortunately dislike butting my head against, because it's really quite frustrating to see that so many people want to put a glass ceiling on themselves. It's like, no, don't do it.
And it's important to note here is we're not talking about, no competitive intelligence. It's so important to understand, because you can't go ridiculous, but what we aren't saying is pricing yourself based off someone else's numbers, pricing yourself based off, someone else's overheads, because at the end of the day, you have no idea if old mate down the road can do the job 2 times quicker or if he's 2 times slower. You have no idea of that context. So to see that and set, old mate down the road as your benchmark, it's an incredibly flawed strategy, because you have your own costs. You should have your own net profit goals. You should, you've got your own business costs, your labor rates, your own salary. All these things get factored in at the end of the day to your labor rate. And if you're just going off what John does down the road, you are not setting yourself up, like you're saying, for, I guess, success at the end of the day, because you're capped, you're limited with your ceiling there.
And we find that through that challenge, it actually opens, because I understand that challenge well now. When I first started on FlatRateNOW, I thought, come on guys, this should just be your bread and butter. Shouldn't you be reviewing this every 3 months? Like that, in my mind, I had it so drilled into me that was just a normal part of the process. But by now understanding that challenge, I can really appreciate when I see a business that does do it every 3 months. They jump in and take a look. They've got a new recruit, a new starter, or they're increasing their ad spend. They just bought a new truck, so they've now got another loan to pay off. They're going through, and you can really see how much happier that business owner really is. They're not exhausted, stressing about trying to find, where's the next dollar coming from, because they know that if they win X amount of jobs at the rate that they're charging, that they're going to make their money. They're going to be able to pay everything back. They're going to be comfortable in what they're doing in their successful growth strategies. And you can see that on the face of some of these business owners. They just they're tanned. They've been going to the beach because they've got 2 hours each day to put aside for themselves. They're looking after their well-being because they don't have to spend that 2 hours chasing something or chasing it in a dollar value somewhere else just to try and make ends meet, because they've actually gone through and done the calculations properly.
And there's so much power in that clarity, because that's actually one of the things that we do. Is we always say it's it's not counterintuitive, but it's almost reverse engineering and different compared to what most people do. Because we go, you need to set a net profit goal, and then you base everything off from that. Because what's the point of being in business if you're just in there to be busy and broke? You need to make the money that you want to make, figure out what your costs are in business. Then from there, you figure out, what are your charge out rates? What do you need to be pricing jobs at? What's your gross profit margin you want to be going for? Because at the end of the day, once you have that clarity of those numbers, then there's certainty in that. Like we were talking about earlier, is you're no longer sitting there when a customer starts price pressuring you. You're not thinking, oh, maybe I can drop this 5% just to get me over the line. You're thinking immediately 5%. If I did that, my profit's going to drop by X amount. That means I can't invest in that, and I'm going to lose money for myself. I'm robbing from myself now, because that's the profit I was going to earn. And there's just that compounding effect. And we always say, once you know this little number called the break-even point, we promise you will never undercharge again.
Yep.
Because if you don't have that clarity, I guess, and like you're saying, the numbers around, okay, I need to make X amount of sales at a gross profit margin of 30%, for example. If I do that, I know I'm hitting my marks for my profit goals. I know I'm covering my overheads. I know I'm paying the guys their salary. And I know, if my billable rate averaged is 70%, I'm on track.
You can pay your mortgage, every month without worry, all those things. Yeah.
But the sad reality is you'd see is, 80% of guys in the industry, they don't have that clarity. They've never seen those numbers. They've never broken down their business and financial modeled it to see how they actually need to perform on a month to month, week to week, day to day basis in order to, I guess, achieve and create the business and lifestyle that they likely got into business ownership for the first place. So they end up just getting in that job to job cycle, that hamster wheel of, I got to be as busy as possible, because they have no clarity on their numbers. So the only feasible thing that they can do is win as much work as possible and be working as much as possible.
and that's what feels the most comfortable for them. You know, sitting down and going through your numbers is an uncomfortable process. You know, we do it often here at FlatRateNOW, and it's just not fun. I mean, I'll be the very first person to say that. I'd rather be talking to people rather than sitting down looking at the numbers. And that's just unfortunately, that's a part of business. You need to be, to grow and be comfortable in the lifestyle that you want, you need to be uncomfortable to get there. And that's what I think unfortunately, a lot of trade business owners, not even just trade business, but a lot of business owners forget that they're so busy feeling uncomfortably busy that they're not that they're uncomfortable in the wrong spaces, because they're trying to find this comfort in just doing what they feel is right. And that's, as you touched on, Troy's, getting jobs. That's all well and good, but you know, would you rather win 5 out of 5 jobs every day, pushing yourself and your team to work 10 to 12 hour days on 5% margin, or not even 5% sometimes, or would you rather win 3 out of 5, work 8 hours, have your guys earn, you know, 30 to 40% profit on those jobs, and when they finish up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they're going, how good is this? I can't wait to come back tomorrow, rather than I've got to come back tomorrow. And that's the difference between understanding, you know, as you touched on, what your net profit needs to be. What should you be earning, and what should you be aiming for each day? Because then once you understand that number, you've got something to work towards. Yeah. And it's as simple as, you know, doing a checklist to even start yourself in that method, to understand that if I can get to that point, I've reached it. I can then move on to something else. And that's a nice little cycle to get into, because that's what business is.
We almost put an umbrella term over it. There's the profit-driven mindset and the volume-driven mindset. Mm-hmm. The only way you can be have a profit-driven mindset is foundationally if you know your numbers. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't know your numbers, you have no clarity on anything.
Yeah. Well, the call-out fee, service fee, diagnostic fee, many different names for it. That's one thing that we actually, if I go through and do a setup, or my team does a setup with a company, we force it onto them. I tell the owner, I don't care if you use it or not. It's a pre-built task. You add it, you don't add it. I honestly don't care. But what you will find is, by adding, even if it's $30, $40, if you don't know what it should be, start at a point that you're comfortable with. If you don't want to figure out the maths at the start, do something like $40 an hour. So $40 for the call out. And they go, oh, well, why? You know, what's that going to accomplish? I said, well, you fed up with just doing quotes for the sake of quoting? Well, yeah, I want to win my jobs. I said, well, if you ask your customer on the phone, hey, it's going to cost $40 for me to come out and give you a quote. You're going to get my expertise in writing, and I'm going to explain what's going on. If they're not willing to pay $40 for that, what makes you think they're going to pay $4,000 for a new hot water system, full upgrade with copper, or $2,000 for the new toilet suite and the new taps? You know, they sit there and think, you see them, they're thinking as well, oh, that's a really good point. Like, I never thought about that. You know, I just don't want to have that barrier to entry. And so, well, there's good barriers and there's bad barriers. And you want a good one at the start, because you don't want to be running around giving quotes out for no reason. And it's, you know, not only does that call out fee help to cover those costs to get out there and in turn make you more profitable, it also means that you then start working with those clients you want to work with. Those clients that believe in your service, or are more interested in understanding your service, rather than just being a quoting aggregation person who's just out there just to give you 5 quotes. Who's the cheapest? 5 words on that quote. Let's go.
Yeah, the term free quote, you just sort of shut up.
And it's so funny the amount of times we get people coming to us. Oh, how do you weed out tie kickers? And then we go at the most foundational level. Oh, do you have a fee for when you go out and do quotes? Oh, no. You're missing the most foundational. And like, it was an interesting point you said, there's good barriers to entry and bad barriers to entry. That's a fantastic one for 1, covering your time involved, 2, covering and I guess positioning your expertise as valuable to the customer, and 3, making sure that if someone's not willing to put, like you're saying, for example, $40, $100, $150, $200 into getting you out there, why are they going to pay $4,000 for a quote? It's madness.
I can see it with all of the, I'm trying to think, I'm honestly scraping my mind to find a company that has more than 10 guys on our software that doesn't have call out fees.
Yeah.
And I'm just seeing the thing, I can't think of any of them that don't. And what they do is they waive the call out. You know, if you go ahead with the job, you don't pay the $50
Yeah.
or whatever it might be. So not only are you producing a really good barrier to entry to weed out the tire kickers, you're then incentivizing your customer to go ahead with the work while you're there. Because you know that through the remaining of the tasks on the quote, there's already ample profit in there. That $50, you're essentially looking at going, I'm going to give this away free anyway. So by having it in there, the customer sees complimentary call out, which is also another really important component, is that if you're giving anything for free to a customer, make sure it's on the bloody quote.
Yeah.
So that's just another completely separate thing that I get. That's one of my other challenges as well, actually, is tradesmen giving things for free.
Yeah.
Waiving the call out fee, you got a good barrier to entry, you got an incentive for the customer to go ahead. The third thing that they're going to do then, they're just going to sign the quote and say, thank you, please get the job done.
Yeah, 100%. And if you're going to site without that fee, man, you are setting yourself up for failure and opening yourself up to those C&D clients that you want to have nothing to do with moving forward and aren't going to be the ones that are going to help you build a successful trade business. And
if you're giving that much experience to your customer, you're essentially within 15 minutes, you're compressing 5, 10, 15 years of knowledge into a 15-minute quote, whether it's in face-to-face on the document. A lot of people out there spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to get that type of information, to be trained on that information. And is it really that bad to ask for a small amount of money to provide that information? You buy a book for $30. That's 10 years of someone's life to write that book. You're more than happy to pay the money. So why wouldn't they, why do tradesmen think that customers aren't happy to pay to get that? It's their own barrier. Yes, as you both touched on, there's customers out there that, I want a free quote, I want a free quote. That's fine. No worries at all. You also don't want every customer.
Yeah.
So you're creating your own buckets there by having it.
And it's an interesting point because you alluded to before, the various names, there's call out fee, service fee. What we like to label it as is a consultation fee.
Yep.
Because it's no different to when you go to your doctor. When you go to your lawyer, when you go to an accountant, what do? You get a consult,
Yep.
which provides a proposal to the solution moving forward. That's exactly what you're doing when you go to site to quote a job up. You're providing them with all your expertise to be like, this is okay, based off looking at this problem, assessing the problem. This is the optimal solution that you need to move forward with. That's what they're paying you for.
Yep.
And that's what they need to be paying you for because that's the value of your solution. And then you progress. Okay. Yep. You want to move forward with the job. Build up the quote, sign it off. Let's move to the next phase.
That's right. The one thing with the with the consultant fees, whether as you said, the consultant fees, diagnostic fees, whatever they want to be called, it's also really important in the detail that they do put in there that goes onto the quote. Because a lot of tradesmen will just put call out $40, and the client's going, wow, I'm not paying $40 for 2 words. But if you have a nice 2 or 3 sentence description, I'm going to send a tradesman who's going to arrive on time with the right gear, investigate, diagnose the problem, and create an upfront detailed quotation to rectify the works. $39, $60, $99, whatever it is. There's so many more words in just that small little bit of text on that quote. And when the client reads it, they're going, well, this isn't just a call out. It is not just to get him here. This is so that he can go through and do what he needs to do to provide with the quote. It's just, that small twist in the mind in just doing that, adding that couple lines of sentences on the call out or the service call, whatever you want to call it, is really powerful for the customers. Because at the end of the day, they just want to understand what they're getting for that money. And if you've got 2 words call out, they're not thinking they're getting much.
Yeah.
So that's also really, really powerful. It's not just having it there, but it's also explain to the client what's involved in it. Yeah. And as you touched on before, the face-to-face is fine when you're talking to them, but if they see that as a document, so if they've had, you're out there talking to one of the homeowners and they say, no, I'm not going to go ahead, and they pay the $99 for a call-out fee, for example, and then they talk to their partner and say, I've paid this. And, on there, it's got a nice big description about what was going to be done for that $99. And then you then have the quote. They can explain that to their partner or to the other person that they have to. It's easy for them to pass on that knowledge. Whereas if they just have the 2 words, good luck.
And it's an interesting point you made here because it really ties into what we're always talking about. Because really, at the end of the day, that's customer experience. If your business and your sales process is customer centric, you're focusing on, okay, how do I make this, even if they don't go ahead with your job, like in this case, how do I make this a great experience for them by breaking down what actually is the consultation fee or the call out fee? What was involved in that? So when they actually do go, fork the money out of their wallet, there's context and it makes sense why they're doing that. They don't feel like they're ripped off now. Even if they don't go with you, they're still leaving that experience with, I only had to pay $99 to get a qualified tradesman out to diagnose my problem properly, quote up a solution using his expertise for $99. You're kidding me.
Yep.
That's a bargain.
Yep.
But the problem is, again, there's no context around there. So why would someone want to, all they're saying is, oh, bloke rocked up and I'm paying some bloke to travel here to just tell me what's going on. And
Yep. It really makes a lot of sense when you think about it, about how a customer would feel. Because I would, pardon my French, I'd have the shits if I saw a quote come across to me for $99 and looked and went, there's 2 words in it. I don't even understand what the bloke was going to be doing here. I'm not paying that. I know personally in my own mind I wouldn't. So why would I expect someone else to do that as well? So it's a bit of empathy in there as well. It's understand how would you feel if someone came to you and did that to you?
So I guess there's another question, Marcel. We're always advocating fixed pricing whenever possible. So I'd be curious to get your thoughts and your perspective on why flat rate pricing or fixed pricing is powerful for trade business owners compared to the standard do and charge model.
It's a really good question, and it's one that I answer a lot of, and we talk about it a lot to not only just business owners, of trade business owners, but even just regular, anybody else out there that's interested in understanding it. When you're doing do and charge, the unfortunate thing about the do and charge approach is your customer is looking at how many hours you're spending on site. Because generally when you're doing the do and charge, you're going to tell your client, or if you're saying, I'm going to do the work, I'm going to invoice you. The moment you've said that, they start their watch, they go click, and they sit there and they watch you, and they monitor you, and they monitor you. And the moment you put that tool down, they go, up, stop. Pick the tool back up, bang, and they start the watch again. And that just becomes a very vicious cycle, because then you can't charge adequately enough to cover for everything, because the only way to do that is to charge for 2 hours or 4 hours a day of labor and try and offset that downtime that a lot of tradesmen will call it by inflating your labor rate. And then you're going from charging $200 an hour to $400 to try and offset it. And then when you start talking to your customer about, I'm charging you for 3 hours of labor and the materials, they go on to Google, go to Bunnings, find that bit on there, go to Reese, find that bit on there, and they go, so you're charging me $290 an hour. How did you figure that out? I did a quick Google search. Yeah. And then that then comes back to the customer going, well, if you're charging me $290 and I'm only earning $45 an hour, I think you're overcharging me. And then all of a sudden you get this massive argument and you haven't even been paid yet. And you're in this full on blue with your customer about trying to get paid for this invoice of $500.
Yeah.
So the reason why we are big advocates of the upfront pricing model, whether it's through FlatRateNOW or through any other system, it doesn't bother me. It's just all about lifting the way the industry is perceived, is that when you're doing an upfront price, you're not telling the customer the breakdown. You're saying that for me to solve your problem, it's going to cost this amount. Yeah. They don't have the nitty-gritty details. They don't know it's going to take 3 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours, because in the customer's mind, what they're really interested in knowing is what's it going to cost me to get my problem fixed. Mm-hmm. If you can then explain to them what's going on with the problem, that's even better. But in saying that, to move a business from a do and charge approach into an upfront pricing method, they need to just understand that the labor set in an upfront quote is actually the time invested on the quote.
Yeah.
Not just the labor, it's not just the time spent on the tools, but the time that the company is investing on that. Because we mentioned it a bit early on, when you're looking at a job, if you actually timed yourself every single time you went out and did a job, from the moment you arrived on site and you knocked on the door and you clicked the watch yourself and you went through the whole process of doing the initial sale to doing the job to then cleaning up, presenting the work, disposing of the old equipment, moving on to the next job, stopping the watch. And then you then had a call back the next day, and you start the watch again. If you did that on all the jobs, you would identify how long it takes you to do that job seriously.
Yeah.
Actually, how long?
Probably about twice the hours of the actual labour on the site generally.
Yeah, and if you look at that time, even if you doubled it, most of the time we find it's about 60 to 70% more. And that's just because of the admin time that gets forgotten.
Yeah.
So the person in the office who's taking the phone calls, or anybody who's doing some admin work around moving the photos or updating the system, whatever it might be, that's still a cost to the business. So by understanding all of the time that you spend or invest as a company on the job means that you can then accurately provide a quote to your customer. Now, a lot of the time I get business owners saying, well, what if it takes me 2 hours and I charge for 3.5? So good on you. That is going to be the smoothest job you've ever had. Are you going to go back to your customer when it's 5 hours and say, sorry, I've got to charge you for another 1.5 hours? And they say, no. I go, why? Oh, because the customer will tell me where to go. Exactly. So why would you think that you would discount your job if you can do it faster, if you can't charge more, if it's going to take you longer? Because the laws of the average is always going to be the best. If you go straight down the middle, you'll always end up doing a little bit of a sine curve, but you're always going to meet in the middle. So by looking to do the upfront pricing method, you not only allow consistency in pricing, so no matter which customer you talk to, you're going to get that price out every time, but you also can predict what you're going to earn on a job.
Yeah.
So you're not constantly trying to chase your own tail and figure out what's going on. You're also having the argument with the customer before you've done the work.
Yeah.
So a lot of these problems that you're having by doing the do and charge approach are flipped on its head with the upfront pricing method, and you're having them beforehand. So that way, once the job's done, you've already got the signature. You can just generate your invoice, collect payment, and off you go. Now, I understand that there's going to be people watching this and go, well, I had a client yesterday who said that they weren't going to pay me even after I got them to sign and after I've done the job. And unfortunately, yes, there are people out there that are scumbags, and they're just going to try and nitpick and be a pain in the ass all the way through. But by having the terms and conditions and all of that stuff integrated into your quotes and providing it up front, you're really reducing the chances of that occurring later on. Yeah. And that just makes for a much better business practice, a much happier business owner, and also happier salesman or happier tradesman as well, because they know what they need to do and they know how to deliver on it.
Yeah. There was an interesting point you made there where a lot of tradesmen have the objection of, oh, what if I work 2 hours, but I'm quoting for 3.5? That right there really is the fundamental flaw in the whole process. You shouldn't be getting paid for your time on site. You should be getting paid for the solution that you're providing. By doing do and charge, it might seem fair. Oh, they're paying for my time on site, but what you might spend on site is completely different to old mate down the road. You have completely different paces, expertise, different skill sets, the tools that you've invested in to be able to deliver that job. So if you're able to deliver it quicker, why should you get less than John down the road who does it slower?
Yeah.
That's why you need to bring it back to the solution, the value of the solution, and price it to that. So if, like you're saying, if you quote it for 3.5 hours, which allows for, it's that bit of a pillow when things do go wrong. There's unforeseen circumstances that occur on some jobs. But if across the board, across all your different jobs, you've got that little bit of buffer that covers you for that one job that goes way over, and there was a lot of stuff went wrong. But at the end of the day, you're pricing it appropriately because you're pricing to the value of the solution.
Yeah. You touched on.
Yeah, you can't do and charge yourself to success. Fixed pricing is the way to run a successful business.
Yeah.
And Troy, you just touched on something that is really important. That I've mentioned this. I had a business owner who he had 3 guys when he started with us, and he couldn't grow beyond 3. And it wasn't because of do and charge. It was because he was still pricing jobs up front, but he was pricing them as if he was doing the job. The business owner who is 110% putting all of his energy into that company, thinking that he can get that job done in 2 hours, when in his own mind, he knew it'd be 3 hours if Marcel did the job. But because he's quoting it based on himself, he was shooting himself in the foot before his tradesman even got on site. So what we did with him is we said, mate, you don't touch the hours. You only increase them if the circumstance is there. For example, a 315 litre, 10 flights of stairs, there's no lift. You need to bump that up a little bit because you're spending more time on site. That's a circumstance where you need to increase it. But I said to him, you don't decrease it. don't touch the hours. If you want to offer a 10% discount because it's a pensioner, you do that on the price, but you leave the hours as they are. He joined with us in January last year, just before COVID. He's now got 12 guys. So he had everything that was going right for him, but the only thing that was blocking him was himself.
Yeah.
So, and that was because he just thought, no, they should be doing it faster. And I said to him, why do you think that's why? Why would you feel that your guys need to break their back to get to the speed that you want them to be at? And once he understood that actually was detrimental to himself and the business, it took about 2 months and he just went bushka, and he just kept on growing. And that he really picked up the software in March last year. And that was when all the lockdowns came into effect. And he grew all the way through. So it just shows you that not only having the processes is one thing, but understanding that, you shouldn't try to push someone else's speed into your own speed, because that's what the averages are for. Is to take that, if there's 3 of us, one's fast, one's medium, one's slow, if we just do it all on the medium guy, no matter who's going to do the job, it's going to come out successful.
Yeah. And that's a very interesting point, because we always say when you do, you fix pricing and you are considering labor, you've got to consider the lowest common denominator in your business. But as the business owner, it's your duty to make sure that lowest common denominator isn't ridiculously low. It's your duty to make sure you've got the right team. So we're not looking to rip everyone off, but you want to keep the standard up. So people aren't going to deliver at your pace. You're the business owner, like you're saying, you've got all the skill sets, but you've got to consider, okay, Hamish, he's just he's just qualified as an electrician. He's not going to be as fast as you. So you need to consider his pace, what are his skill sets, his expertise, and that's how you've got to price the job. So with that buffer that no matter who goes out to site, you're making a profit.
And you don't want him flustered that he has to perform at a level that he's not comfortable with, because that's when mistakes are made.
Yeah, Marcel. So flat rate pricing this is kind of touching on what we were talking about earlier. It's really all about pricing for value, not just for your base hourly rate. And I know you're pretty passionate about this, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on selling through value.
Upselling is one of the easiest ways to grow your average value on a quote. It's probably the quickest way. And the reason why I think it's the quickest way is because when you start to upsell to your client, you're actually turning around and saying, okay, I've got a hot water system, or I've got a ceiling fan, or whatever it might be that you're installing. This is what I've got to do to get this done, or this is your problem, here's a solution. But while I'm doing this, would you like me to install this? And this is what this is going to do for you. So if you're, and there's some really simple synergies that you can have with some of the jobs. If you're installing a hot water system, an easy upsell is a new valve set. Would you like me to upgrade the copper pipe connecting into where the hot water system is going to be? Because once you start to talk about the additional work that you're going to do for the customer, you're educating them on more of what's involved. Once you start educating them on more, it starts to open more doors, because then they're going to go, well, do I need the tempering valve? And you go, well, actually, according to the Australian standards, we have to install it. But also, in addition to that, every 12 months, we're meant to service the tempering valve. And that's so that your son, who's 3 years old, doesn't just turn on the hot water one morning and 90-degree water comes shooting out of that tap. Last thing we want for little Timmy is third-degree burns. So through opening those doors and talking about the additional upsells that are available to the job, you can actually then talk about more of the experience that you've got and the more knowledge, and pass that on to your clients, because value is really hard to force onto someone. Yeah. You can't force value. They have to believe that what you're giving to them is of value at the end of the day. And the quickest way to get to that point of value is through the education. Mm-hmm. And again, the quickest way to get to the point where you can educate your client as much is just look at all the different cross sections of the job that you're doing, and what more can you offer to your customer. If you're servicing a tap, okay, you've got your bathroom over here. Well, Marcel, do you know when your other taps were last serviced? Got no clue? Okay, well, here's a price for me to service all your other taps as well. I'm installing a new ceiling fan. Hey, according to the Australian standards, I need to inspect your switchboard. This is why. Okay, here's your switchboard. Look, you've got an old asbestos board, and these are all ceramic fuses. This should have been gone in the 70s or 80s. I need to give you a quote to upgrade your switchboard. So there's a really quick steps into offering that extra value to your customer, and it all just stems from looking at what more can I do.
It's funny too, Marcel. I read somewhere years ago some statistical data is at the point of sale. So whether it's a shop or any point of sale, 60% of customers are prepared at that point of sale to spend 60% more on the purchase. And if you're not able to sell, look at that selling process, because 60% of people will spend more money with you if you ask. And that's why, would you like fries with that?
Yeah.
That's made McDonald's millions and millions of dollars, just that simple question. And people expect it nowadays. So it's very powerful.
And at that foundational level, we like to call it not so much upselling, but value management, because you're not trying to steal the customer out of more money unnecessarily. Again, this comes back to you being the expert and you educating the customer, because they don't know a lot of the things that you know. So if you educate them about, oh, I noticed this, your switchboard's outdated, it's not up to standards like you're saying, the customer doesn't know that. So you're looking out for their best interest now. And, if you make a buck along the way, fantastic. That's great. But this really comes back to not being a secondhand sleazy car salesman with your push tactics, trying to, sleaze anything through the line. This is all about, how do I help while I'm on site, while they've got me on site, an expert on site, how do I add more value to this customer to ensure that I'm giving them the best service possible? Because at the end of the day, you're obligated to do that as the professional. If you're not looking out for their best interest, then you're not, I guess, upholding to your duty as the professional.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yep.
Bringing that back to like even doctors, bulk billing, although it might have seemed like a really good strategy to come in where you get, free sort of healthcare, is the doctors are now that push for timing that they're squeezing everyone through. And we've all been to a doctor where, they're looking at their keyboard, typing away, and not even interested in the customer because they're just churning through the numbers. That's what a tradesman's like if they don't take the time and effort to be a trusted advisor and really check. So don't be the bulk billing guy, be the guy that charges, appropriate fees and really gives a good diagnosis and care about the customer.
Yeah.
Well, that's where your consultancy fee comes into it. Because if you are charging for that, you are essentially giving yourself a nice gap in time to sit back and go, my customer is paying for my time to be here to give them a solution. Why wouldn't I take a little bit of extra time to then expand on that value and go, well, look, you've called me out because of this. While I'm here, I've also noticed this and this. Now, checklists are an important part of that. Here in Sydney, I would say that the old annual checklist has probably been burnt to the ground because there's so many people that do it, and customers are cluing onto it going, you're just coming out every 12 months to charge me more money. But that's because they're not getting the value from the checklist.
Yeah.
They're not understanding that checklist, or what we're out here to do, is to actually support you and support your property. Because at the end of the day, that's exactly what the tradesmen are there for. They're there to make sure that your property is compliant, your property is upheld to a standard, you're going to have hot water, you're going to have power. But so there is a point where value also does implode on itself, because you just start to do too much of it and you start to ram it in, and it does feel like a used car salesman because it becomes a tactic rather than a benefit.
Yeah. And it's a really interesting point you made, Marcel, about looking out for their best interest, because we're actually talking to a plumbing client of ours the other day, and because of his negative feelings towards the word upselling, he was doing one job, but he noticed that the hot water system, he realized, that's going to bust in a year or two. But because of his fear towards upselling, he actually didn't communicate that to the customer. So in his I guess, desire to not be a sleazy secondhand car salesman, he's actually missed out on not only his opportunity, but his duty to educate the customer. Because at the end of the day, it's the customer who's got to make the decision. You've got to inform them, I saw this, I'm not here to upsell you or anything. This is all about, I've noticed this, and I'm letting you know, because you've got to keep this in mind moving forward, that you should probably get this rechecked in 6 months or 12 months time. This is an important thing. Again, it comes back to the value on the job.
And I do feel that plumber may have potentially worked for a company that pushed, because I do know some companies out there if you're not pushing the upsell, then, you're not there for very long. And that can leave a really foul taste in your mouth, because you're then walking away from that customer. If you're a real empathetic person and you're trusting, you want to ensure, by your nature, you want to give as much value as possible. But then when that gets a title put on it, and it gets not just measured, but used and abused, you feel sick in trying to do that, because you know that it's the right thing to do, but you feel sick in that you're thinking, I want to be like that mob again, and I don't want to be associated to that type of mob. So I would rather miss the opportunity and potentially even have my license on the line, because I just don't want to feel like I'm being, associated in with that tactic. But at the end of the day, your customer, as you both touched on, it's your customer that says yes or no. And as long as you're not pushing it in a format or a tactical, so what's what I'm looking for? Like a tactical method, then you're just trying to support them. And as long as you educate them, help them touch on what they need and what they should be aware of, value can come in many different ways.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I guess we've talked about a lot of stuff here today, which has been fantastic. I guess a lot of insight for a lot of the viewers. But do you have any closing words on this topic that you'd like to share?
Don't be afraid of it.
Yeah.
Really, don't be afraid of providing a quote up front. I do believe and feel that a lot of business owners feel that that's, lifting the skirt on their system. Oh my God, I can't give a quote up front. Or thinking that by looking at a system like FlatRateNOW, you're being forced into using a specific hour, not hourly rate, sorry, but a specific allocated hours. You're not. Systems like FlatRateNOW, or anyone else out there that does build a system like ours, the idea is that we give you as much as we can to remove as much work as possible. So if we can tell you that on average it takes 3.5 hours, you just make the decision. No. For us, it's 3 hours. Okay, you make the change. It's a lot easier to take away than it is to add. Because you can because we've built everything up, or the system has been built to have everything there or as much as possible, it makes it a lot faster for you to do those tweaks and changes. So the only thing that I can say is just don't be afraid of it. It's not, black and white in the way that the upfront pricing is. If your company does quoting up front, you don't have to, just stick to that method. We have many of our companies will still do and charge where necessary. It's just to find that yin and yang, that nice balance in your business. If you look at doing the mundane jobs as your starting point, the servicing of taps, the replacement of taps, switchboard services, or replacement of downlights, whatever they may be, if you can look at replacing them and doing them as an upfront quote and see how that will change the speed of delivery for your customers, then that's a good starting point. So that's just the one thing I'd say is don't be afraid of looking at systems that are going to help you to improve your delivery and the value that you can provide to your customers.
That's awesome.
Yeah, awesome insight. So how can people find out about FlatRateNOW, Marcel?
Well, you can jump on our website, so flatrateNOW.net. Jump on there. We've got lots of information on there. You can reach out to us by the phone on the website as well, or through our Facebook page or Instagram page. Also, if you want a demo of the software, we can also organise that as well. But if you do have any other questions, I'm sure that they can reach out to the both of you, and you can put them in touch with us.
Awesome. Well, it was great to have you on, Marcel. It was an awesome conversation. This is a topic that I feel like a lot of people want to hear more information on, because it can get so confusing a lot of times with a lot of contradicting information out there. But it's great to have experts like you pioneering this area, especially the flat rate area, and driving that forward and trying to, I guess, help trade businesses become more successful.
We're really passionate about pricing and getting it right, and having smart tools that help articulate that. This is a game changer. So it's really awesome.
Yeah, 100%.
We're really keen to improve how businesses use software, improve the industry and all that as well. So we're really excited by it. Everyone in our company is really keen to see the industry progress and grow, and really be perceived as what it should be. At the end of the day, plumbing and electrical are two of the main, you need them in your life. If you don't have hot water, if you don't have lights, come on, if they're not the two main things that you need, then I don't know what else is. So I'm really excited to see what we can do for the industry and improve it.
I think refrigeration and air conditioning will be up there too.
Well, it depends who you talk to, right? No. Coming from someone who's not even a tradesman, it's like, I don't know.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it for jumping on.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. Have a good night, guys.
Good talking to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.